Hi, Col, old chap, and how are you today?
But we're doing fine, thanks, Nigel. Do you know this is our 22nd podcast?
22nd. My goodness.
And we try and do one of these every week. So we say to people, please, if you're enjoying this, then just click the subscribe. And then every time we do another one, you get a little message about it.
Well, that's great. We're doing better. Shall we crack on?
Yep, I think we should. Yeah, let's do it, Nigel.
Hello, this is Nigel.
And Colin with another Encore Years podcast.
This is about retirement and learning to love it.
And today we're joined by Steve, and he's been recommended by Jane, who we did a few months ago. And, she's told us that we've got to talk to Steve and learn all about him. So we don't know much about him, but hopefully we're going to learn a lot.
So, hello, Steve. And how's it going?
Yeah, thank you.
All doing well?
All going well.
Good. Can I start by asking, what did you do before retiring?
Okay, so when I graduated, I had a job in a bookshop for a year, which in CV terms was an asterisk, but in life terms was a very productive year because I met Fiona, my wife, who was also working at that same bookshop.
Ah.
I then joined the civil service and specifically the Foreign Office. And for the next 30 years, Fiona and I had a nomadic life, alternating overseas postings with stints back in the UK. And during those 30 years, we had 3 children. After 30 years, I left the Foreign Office and took up a new job in Brussels, so also dealing with international relations, and we stayed in Brussels for 11 years. We would have stayed another couple of years, and that was our plan, to come back when I turned 65, but COVID hit. Around that same time, our first 3 grandchildren came on the scene, so we sort of reassessed relative priorities and decided that being back in the UK and closer to family, and specifically closer to grandchildren, was a higher priority than another 2 years of working in Brussels. So in 2022, we moved back to the UK and back to our home in Sevenoaks, and therein began retirement. So I've now been retired for 4 years.
So what were the first 6 months like of retirement?
Yeah, a very unique time in my life, I guess. It was, it felt a bit to begin with like an extended holiday, and I kept having to pinch myself on, Sunday evenings that I didn't have to worry about getting up on Monday morning. It was, I think the best thing about those first 6 months was that I felt very happy with my decision to retire. Because, people say, oh, you'll know when it's time. And I was never totally sure that whether that would be the case. But I think, the reasons that we, Fiona and I, had for coming back a bit earlier than planned, i.e. being nearer to the family, was the right one. And the fact that I didn't miss work at all from pretty much from day one, I think was a sign of that. I missed the people, the colleagues, but I didn't miss the sort of, going to work every day. So that was a strong positive. I found probably the most difficult aspect of those first 6 months was people inevitably would say, okay, Steve, what's your plan for retirement? What are you going to do? And I had sort of, I guess my answers came across slightly defensively, but I had sort of ideas of things that I wanted to do, but in pretty vague terms, like sort of, a bit of maybe do some volunteering, maybe learn a language, maybe do some studying, maybe I'll do some consultancy, do sport, etc. These were sort of fairly vague aspirations, and there was no structure. And deliberately, I didn't want to, in those first few months, to sort of lock into too many fixed commitments, which would then erode the flexibility, which is one of the beauties of retirement.
Yeah.
But it sort of worried me a bit that I should have had a more fully worked up plan for day one. But in fact, I'm glad I didn't, and it all worked out fine. But that was a sort of an interesting aspect of those first 6 months.
That is interesting. What did happen then? How did it develop?
Well, it sort of evolved kind of naturally, and continues to evolve. I mean, the old cliche of sort of, lifelong learning, I think that's one of the beauties of carrying that through into retirement, of trying out things, and some work out, some don't. So I started volunteering with the National Trust. Knoll House is, or not in the house itself, but Knoll Park, which is near us in Sevenoaks. I started volunteering there. I've subsequently done some additional volunteering with the local council, maintaining the common areas in the Sevenoaks district. Resumed piano lessons after a gap of 50 years. I joined a walking group. We do a fair amount of grandparenting, which we do with great pleasure and great joy, but it is quite a time commitment. Not all those things happened in one go, and some things didn't work out. For example, I resumed badminton after also an interval of about 40 years maybe, and enjoyed it, but then tore a calf muscle trying to sort of be my 20-year-old self again, and realised that perhaps it was a bit much. That's more a mental thing, I think, actually. I could have gone back to it again, but I think having had a fairly bad injury, I didn't want to push my luck.
Involved with lots of things. What do you feel so far as your greatest achievement?
If I was looking at sort of specific achievements, I would say with the piano, which I gave up at the age of 12, disliking sort of having to practice and just having to go to lessons. And I resumed, over 50 years later, and said to the teacher, I didn't want to take exams and I didn't want to do classical pieces. And within about 3 months, I changed my tune on both those things, and sort of a competitive side of me thought actually having an exam to aim at would make me more motivated and work harder. And I realized also on a technical level that doing classical pieces as well as some other stuff would help. So I passed grade 5, and then I passed grade 6. Grade 5 reasonably comfortably. Grade 6 was a bit of a struggle, but at least I passed it. So that was a specific achievement. I think if one's being broader, more philosophical, I would say what I've just described in terms of activities and getting from where I was in those first 6 months of sort of thinking, this is great, sort of being retired, but kind of, what actually am I going to be doing, to getting to a position where I feel, reasonably comfortable that I've got the balance roughly right between sort of structure and flexibility. I think that's a good achievement. Above all, feeling overall happy and contented.
Great. I think that's very interesting when you say you didn't have a specific plan, and then when you look back, you were glad you didn't. And I know what you mean, that you can have it all worked out, and perhaps it doesn't. So
yeah, I mean, I had some ideas. It wasn't as if I thought, oh crikey, here I am retired. What am I going to do? But some people have much more worked up plans than I did. Some have less. So it's there's no sort of, to use the cliche, one size fits all. But I think overall it worked out okay.
Advice, if you were sort of passing this on to someone, if a colleague says, look, I'm going to retire at Christmas, what's the one thing, Steve, that you'd say, do or don't?
There's lots of sources of advice, and it's good to hoover up, both written advice in some newspapers and books are useful, and certainly observing friends and family, what has worked out well and what you think hasn't worked out well for other people. Those are useful things to do. Financial planning, I would say, is important, not least in terms of the timing of retirement, because in making use of the time, it only gets you so far if you haven't got any money to benefit from it. So financial planning is quite important. But I think viewing, for those that are fortunate enough to have a partner with them, and B, grandchildren, two aspects of that. One is that with the partner, one tends to think, or retirement tends to be sort of allocated to one person, but really it's a joint enterprise. And it's very important to talk to your partner about retirement and get ideas for how to enjoy the time together and do things together, but also, and probably just as important, how to make sure you have some separate interests and separate activities so that you give each other space. I think that's important. And in terms of the grandchildren, again, we're very fortunate. We've now got 6. So it's a great joy. But I think you have to sort of be clear in your own mind with your partner and with your children, i.e. the parents of the grandchildren, about more or less what is the sort of time commitment on a regular basis that you're comfortable with doing. Of course, emergencies are a different matter, but the sort of regular grandparenting. I think that getting that balance right is important. But I think, the advice would be enjoy it, try out new things. If something doesn't work out, don't be sort of afraid to say, well, that was worth trying, but it's going in the bin and I'll try something else.
That's very good. That one is very good. Do you and your wife do some of these activities, badminton, walking, volunteering? Do you work together on them?
Well, grandparenting, yes. Sometimes we do it solo, but more often than not, we'll do it together. The volunteering, for example, the one with the council on the Commons, I do. The National Trust, we both do, but not together. So we do it at the same place, but we occasionally will do it together. Generally, one of the things is to sort of each make new friends and contacts. So we more often than not we'll do it separately, and Fiona actually does much more than I do with the National Trust. We do a lot of walking together, but Fiona's not in the walking group that I do weekly a walk, but we do quite a lot ourselves. So most of those activities are solo ones, and she has other things that she does which I don't do.
So I guess you've been retired about 5-6 years now. Is that right?
Yes, yeah.
4 years. Yeah. So what happens next? What's the next plan?
I think sort of more of the same in terms of the approach. It's evolution rather than revolution, I think. On the piano front, I haven't yet committed to doing grade 7, but the sort of competitive side of me thinks I probably should. But the length of time it's taking to prepare for each exam is getting longer, and by the time I get sort of technically capable, I'll probably be so sick of the pieces that I may not want to do it. But so I'll see that. I'm doing Duolingo. My studying, I originally thought, well, maybe I'll do an OU course or something like that. But then I thought that these things require a big time commitment. So it's much more modest. I've been doing some Duolingo, generally linked to whatever's the next holiday. And I find that's quite good as a way of sort of keeping the brain going. So I'll probably continue to do that.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. See, of the people we've spoken to, not many people have actually talked about joint enterprise. And I think that's a really important one to recognize. A lot of people are doing things and so on. But joint enterprise, even though you're not doing things together, you're kind of talking and planning, and you're working together. And Nigel, I think quite a few people tend not to say that, although they have another half.
Well, I think you're right. Most couples do different things, we've found so far, which is interesting in the main, not totally, but which is quite interesting. And you get away on holiday? You enjoy your holidays as well?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's something we've always enjoyed, holidays. We do together, and we will continue to enjoy our.
Do you try and get to countries you haven't worked in?
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, one of our daughters for 4 years was living in the States, which coincided more or less with our retirement. So actually, we've been over there. She's back now, but we went there quite a few times. This year, end of the year, doing a long overdue trip to Australia to see Fiona's brother and sister-in-law, who we haven't seen over there. They've been over here regularly, but we haven't been over there for quite a while. So that'll be a big trip. Otherwise, mixture of UK and overseas holidays. We enjoy exploring the UK. We went to Orkney last year, and we've been up to Shetland this year. So that's a lot of fun.
I don't think I've ever met anyone who's done both of those, Steve.
Both highly recommended.
Right.
Well, they're just so interesting, and I'm so glad we've met you and learned all these good things you say, and we'll certainly be able to bring out some sort of great recommendations from this. What do you think, Nigel?
Yeah, definitely. Great advice, and I'm sure people will be very interested to watch and listen to you.
Oh, it's been really nice talking to you both. So thanks for having me on.
Lovely. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah. So are we all done, Nigel?
Well, I think we are, bro. I think we're done.
All right.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thanks very much then. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Well, that was another great interview, Cole, and a very nice guy, Steve, and very interesting. The first point, he let retirement evolve naturally, and he talked about evolution not revolution.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
have no plan.
No, I picked up on that very much as well. And interesting, kind of similar to me, the COVID thing. COVID comes along and it changes. Just like me, it was a year change, and him, it was a 2-year change. Then he talks about the time with the grandchildren, 3 grandchildren, and now 6 grandchildren. So that was great.
Yeah. And he picked up a skill that he'd left at 12 years old, and that was playing the piano, learning to play the piano. And he decided to get back his skills and get better at that. And he got on to grade 6, which you and I never did, if I remember rightly. But it's a pretty high grade, I think, isn't it?
Well, particularly, it's probably okay if you're a teenager, but if you're our age doing it, very tough.
Yeah, that's very brave to do that.
And then the Duolingo, and I tell you what I quite like about it is linking to holidays. So you think, we're going to go to somewhere, right, let's learn the language. So you've got a real focus. You've only got 8 more weeks to learn or whatever. So I like the way you tied that together.
Yeah, you don't want to go to Bulgaria, do you?
With 8 weeks to go.
Difficult. Yes, that's true. That's true. Also, he does a lot of local volunteering and joins walking groups. Try something new, he says, and change if it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the final thing that sort of picked up on this is with partners, the joint enterprise. So you're doing different things. Talk to your partner. It is a joint enterprise. I like that very much. So great to talk to Steve.
It was good. Now, don't you have to say something about pressing something now?
Well done. Yeah. So either below me or Nige, there's this button that says subscribe, and it costs you nothing. But each time we do a new one of these, it pings up and reminds you to watch it.
Okay, are we done, bro?
We are done. Thanks so much, Nige.
Well, that's over and out.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.